Hello guys, welcome to Haymanager, and today just the analysis on the United game and everything that went on last night in a disappointing Europa League final. Just going to go through how the two teams lined up, Emery's side and Solskjaer's side. So I'll transition over to my screen now, and as you can see I've got the little lineups here. It was a disappointing night for Manchester United. They started off with a controversial pick, which was David De Gea in net. Whether or not you believe Henderson had a poor game against Liverpool, I think De Gea playing the majority of the cup games probably deserved to start. It wasn't too controversial. He's been a great servant for the club. You'd expect him to probably start in the Europa League final. And we had Wan-Bissaka at right back, the main right back for the entire season. Very good start. Then Bay partnered Lindelof, pushed Lindelof into that left centre-back role, which was interesting, I thought. A weird one to start Bay on that right-hand side. I know he's more of a better, basically, in that right centre-back role, but a weird one to put him there when Lindelof had been playing this position all year. It's a strange one to me. I'd probably much prefer to see Tuanzebe play that left-hand side instead of Bay coming in playing that right-hand side. I know he's signed a new contract lately, or I think it's rumoured to have anyway, if he hadn't already. But yeah, he didn't have a great night, Bay, I've got to admit. Then Luke Shaw on this left-hand side. The relationship with Lindelof wasn't perfect, but he started on that left-hand side regardless because he's had a fantastic year. Pogba partnered McTominay in a double pivot in the midfield, then Fernandes playing a bit more of a central attacking midfielder role, but still dropped a bit deeper as well. Rashford on that left-hand side, Greenwood on the right-hand side, and then Cavani up front. You could argue this is probably our strongest side, bar Maguire. And then Villarreal, Unai Emery's side, which is, you've got to give it Unai Emery. His PSG days were fantastic, the Arsenal days were a struggle. So, in essence, he really does know the Premier League pretty well, considering he had, I think he had 2 years at Arsenal. And then going to Villarreal, tactical genius. He's won this so many times with Sevilla as well. It's only a matter of time, really, before we saw him probably lift the trophy again, and he has done so. He played a very flat 4-4-2, a 4-4-2 which saw, I've got the lineup here, so Rulli in net, who's played the majority of the cup competitions, Foyth, Torres, Albiol and Pedraza, a mixture of youth and experience at the back. Pau Torres, a fantastic player, been linked with us. Pino, he played at right back as well, an interesting one nonetheless, and then Capoue and Parejo in the midfield. I thought it might have been Coughlin in the midfield, but Capoue started with Parejo, obviously Parejo, then Trigueros on that left-hand side, then Moreno on the right, Bacca on the left-hand side of the front two. They played at a very deep, so the two centre mids played very deep. The wingers as well, they didn't really get far forward. You didn't see many crosses. You saw a few times they'd go to the byline, but immediately they'd run back, and it was a very defensive back eight, I'd call it. And then the two strikers sort of held up the ball, got the ball to feet, and then held it up and let the two players run off them. But now let's get into the details of what's happened. So I'll quickly just show you what's happened. So what we'll do is we'll push these players a bit further forward as they would sit. So Rashford sat in this sort of position here. I'd say it allowed the left back and right back to sit in that position. Cavani then obviously occupied this space. Fernandes tried to occupy the space in there as well, but these two midfielders sitting very deep. They sat very deep, like in and around here. Sort of had Fernandes on strings, and then we saw this left midfielder sort of go a bit further up. I'd say that they sat near enough on the halfway line, these two midfielders, left midfielders, and what these wide midfielders, I call them. And the strikers sat very high up. One sat a little bit deeper than the other. I think Bacca sat a bit deeper, letting Moreno get a bit further forward. Moreno played that right hand side, didn't he? Like so. So this is how it sat, and then Pogba sat in a role where he could sort of dictate play, so he sat around about here. So Scott McTominay sat a bit deeper in this position. Greenwood got further forward as well. He likes to get further forward. Not as deep as Rashford, but he does like to get a bit further forward, Greenwood, so he sat here. Wan-Bissaka obviously sitting a bit forward as well. But this is sort of how the game sat out. It was very clustered in this area. A much more dominant style of play for Villarreal in that midfield area, if you've noticed. It really silenced Pogba getting in any space. McTominay had a few surges in around here. We saw Greenwood going down this right hand side to get closed down very often by the left back and the left centre back, mostly being, I think it was Pau Torres and Foyth, I believe. Either way, these three players here would sort of surround and close down Greenwood, meaning he'd have to go backwards to where Wan-Bissaka would push here, and it'd just be Greenwood playing the ball backwards, as I'll show you now, played the ball backwards to Wan-Bissaka, who played the ball into McTominay. These players here would then be able to rotate out, go back to their positions. Greenwood would drop a bit deeper again. And it was just a bit of a shambles all night, really. It was just a bit all over the place all night. United did have the majority of the possession. If we go back to what happened, it was a weird situation where in the 60th minute, Coughlin came on. I believe, was it Baka? I think Baka came off. The whole game just stopped. The game stopped. What we saw was these players would sit incredibly. The back four for Villarreal would sit incredibly deep. We then saw Capoue and Parejo sit literally on top of each other. The left mid and the right mid would mark Rashford and Greenwood. If anything, we'd be pushed back a little bit ourselves, which meant the link between Shaw and Rashford and Wan-Bissaka and Greenwood were a bit thinner. And then McTominay and Pogba sitting in this sort of position, it sort of forced us to, and then Fernandes dropped a bit deeper, it sort of forced us to play a very flat 4-5-2. The strikers would drop a lot deeper as well, which meant Lindelof and Bailly could push a bit further forward, but these were nullified all game by the two strikers. Just, they wouldn't press, they wouldn't do anything. Nothing really happened, in essence. It was a weird game. McTominay had a very, very good game, an incredibly great game. Pogba, a few great balls in around the area, but Greenwood really didn't settle the whole game. And the one player he brought on was Fred. Now, Fred came on for Greenwood, which meant Greenwood go on the bench. I'll put him over here because this is the players that obviously come back on. Fred came on, and it was just a bit weird, in all honesty. Pogba came off as well in a certain minute. We didn't bring any attacking threats on. We brought James on for Pogba, which meant Rashford would go on this right-hand side, Pogba would come off, James went on this left-hand side, tried to push a bit further forward. Fernandes could go and get forward because Fred and McTominay in the midfield. But it was just, we should have had McTominay play as a single pivot for the 60th minute onwards. McTominay in there because he was playing an absolute stunning game of football he played. And then Fred shouldn't have come on. Fred genuinely shouldn't have come on. We should have had Rashford playing on the edge of the strikers up here. We should have Cavani on one, Rashford on the other to occupy this space. Then you can have your two wingers. I know Greenwood didn't have a fantastic game, so you bring someone else on. Whether or not you let Fernandes play in around this role, James switch out to the right hand side, let Rashford have this area. You've then got four players that can play up around here, and bring on Van der Beek as well. Van der Beek, in my eyes, completely disrespected. This man should have been playing in on this left hand side, letting Rashford have either the lanes going down this left hand side like so, going in around here, Van der Beek sitting in this area where he likes to collect the ball in this area with his back to this centre back, which lets Fernandes have, well, Fernandes has to get picked up by these two players. McTominay can come forward a bit more. Cavani gets picked up. James has got the pace on this right hand side, or even if this happens where Rashford goes onto this side, James onto this side, it still means there's so much more going on up front. Then your wing backs can come a bit further forward. You've got two strikers that only have to be picked up by Lindelof and Bailly, which I think genuinely Baka didn't really make an impact at all throughout the game. Moreno, a star striker. Alcacer came on in the 77th minute, but no real substitutes were made by Solskjaer, and that was effectively the downfall for Manchester United this game. A really poor game altogether. Fred, for me, as much as his work ethic's brilliant, we need to have a player that can play that single pivot. Whether or not McTominay adapts his game so he can play that just in front of those two players at the back, picks up the ball, pings it out, and lets the two midfielders like Fernandes or Van der Beek come deeper, essentially. In essence, what you wanted to have seen was something along these lines where you just free reign, essentially, of the front of the midfield, and then Rashford over on this left hand side, Greenwood on the right hand side, Pogba and Cavani through there. This is how the game would have set up much nicer, because you can have Fernandes running through the lines, Pogba running through the lines, overlapping over here, more overlaps from Shaw and Wan-Bissaka, which pulls your players out a bit wider, leaves a lot of space here for Pogba and Fernandes really to just fire a few shots away. And it was just a poor game altogether. For United anyway, for Villarreal, how they were drilled to perfection, because they came very narrow like so, which meant Green would come down this side, but then you'd have the three doubling up, your left mids would come inside, and it just works so well. Effectively, it was one of the best tactical displays in a final I've seen for a long time, especially in the modern game. A great tactical final which saw a very defensive side, but at the same time a very efficient side, a side that were aimed to nullify Manchester United, and they knew they had the firepower up front in Moreno to really get a goal if they needed it, which they did in the end. That's that for this episode. A poor night for Manchester United. A real morale hit for Manchester United. Solskjaer losing yet again. That season finished runners-up in the Premier League and Europa League. A disappointing year all around. Let me know down below in the comments what you think Manchester United should have done and what your post-analysis is of this game, because I'm a big one on post-analysis. Hindsight, you can see a lot of things, but post-analysis, to review the game in itself, Emery had a fantastic game. Solskjaer, tactics-wise, probably set up pretty well, but the players just didn't really turn up. It was a disappointing night altogether. So yeah, hope you did enjoy this episode of Sideline Source. If you did, please leave a like, subscribe if you're new for more of this content. I'll be bringing you a few more interesting videos and potentially a new FIFA series coming up as well. See you soon. Have a great day. Ciao.